Leon's ending wasn't about heroism. It was about a man finally giving in to the one thing he spent his entire life avoiding. Spoilers ahead. Leon, the professional hitman who lives by rigid rules and emotional distance, dies protecting a 12-year-old girl is known for a matter of days, and the film frames this as redemption, as love, as the moment he finally became human. But if you look at the decisions he made throughout the entire story, this ending doesn't fit the psychological pattern of who Leon actually was. And understanding why requires examining not what Leon says he believes, but what his behavior reveals about the engine driving every choice he makes. Leon's life is built on a single architectural principle: complete emotional insulation. And this isn't a personality quirk or a character flaw the story needs to fix. It's a survival mechanism so deeply embedded in his psychology that every detail of his existence reinforces it. He drinks milk instead of alcohol because alcohol lowers inhibitions and creates emotional vulnerability. He sleeps sitting up in a chair instead of lying in a bed because beds represent rest, and rest requires trust, and trust is a door he cannot afford to open. He owns almost nothing because possessions create attachment, and attachment creates leverage, and leverage creates risk. And when Mathilda asks him if life is always as hard or just when you're a kid, he answers always like this. Which isn't wisdom, it's confession. Leon isn't teaching her about the world. He's describing the internal architecture of his own psychology, a system built on the fundamental belief that connection equals danger, that feeling anything for anyone transforms you from predator to prey. And the moment you care about something, you've given the world a weapon to use against you. The only possession Leon allows himself is a plant, and the plant isn't random decoration. It's the most revealing psychological detail in the entire film because it represents the absolute limit of what Leon can permit himself to care about. Something alive, yes, but something that can't speak, can't ask questions, can't demand emotional reciprocity, can't leave, can't betray, and most importantly, can't make him feel anything he isn't prepared to control. He calls it his best friend, and the tragedy embedded in that statement is that he means it, that a plant represents the closest thing to companionship his psychology can tolerate. And when he tells Mathilda the plant is happy because it has no roots, he's not talking about the plant, he's talking about himself, explaining the core principle of his existence. Safety exists only in the absence of attachment. Happiness exists only in the freedom to disappear. The plan is Leon's compromise with his own humanity, a way to have something without having anyone. And it works perfectly until Mathilda arrives and reveals that caring for something incapable of caring back isn't connection. It's just another form of isolation. And here's what makes Leon's psychology so consistent. He doesn't break his own rules because of morality. He breaks them because Mathilda represents the exact threat his entire life was designed to avoid. His no women, no kids rule isn't about ethics. It's about emotional quarantine. Women and children aren't off limits because they're innocent. They're off limits because they trigger empathy, and empathy is the crack in the armor that lets the world in. When he opens a door and sees Mathilda covered in her family's blood, he's not making a moral choice. He's making an impossible one. Turn her away and maintain the system, or let her in and acknowledge that some part of him, some deeply buried human element he's spent decades oppressing, still recognizes suffering when it's staring him in the face. He chooses a door, and the moment he does, his entire psychological defense system is compromised because Mathilda doesn't just need shelter, she needs connection, and connection is the one thing Leon has structured his entire existence to prevent. But there's a deeper layer to why Leon opens that door, and it connects to the one piece of his past the film reveals. He had a woman he loved, and something happened that forced him to leave his entire life behind and become what he is now. The film doesn't specify what happened, and that ambiguity is crucial because it doesn't matter whether she died or betrayed him or was taken from him. What matters is that Leon learned the lesson his psychology has been built around ever since. Connection creates vulnerability. Vulnerability creates loss. And loss creates a kind of pain that destroys you so completely you have to become someone else entirely just to survive. When he sees Mathilda at his door, covered in blood and orphaned by violence, he's not just seeing a child in danger, he's seeing a mirror of whatever loss created him. And some unconscious part of his mind recognizes that if he turns her away, he's confirming that the lost one, that he let it transform him so completely there's nothing human left, and is not ready to accept that verdict. Not yet. Watch what happens next, because it reveals everything about Leon's internal conflict. He tries to teach her the only language he knows. He doesn't comfort her, doesn't talk about her feelings, doesn't acknowledge the trauma. He hands her a gun and teaches her to kill, because killing is the only relationship model he understands, the only form of connection that doesn't require vulnerability. If Mathilda becomes a cleaner, they can exist in parallel. Two professionals sharing space without sharing selves. And this is Leon's unconscious compromise. He'll let her stay, but only if she agrees to remain as emotionally isolated as he is. But Mathilda refuses a deal. She doesn't want to be a professional. She wants to be close to him. And every time she pushes for emotional intimacy, asking about his childhood, declaring her love, trying to sleep in his bed, Leon retreats into his rules, his routines, his rigid behavioral patterns, because the alternative is admitting that he feels something too, and feeling something means the system has failed. The scene where Mathilda plays Russian roulette is the moment Leon's psychological defense system nearly collapses completely, because she's forcing him to confront the exact thing he's been avoiding, proof that he cares whether she lives or dies. She puts the gun to her head, pulls the trigger, and Leon doesn't react with the calm of a professional. He reacts with the terror of someone watching the thing he cares about threaten to disappear. And his reaction, grabbing the gun, yelling at her, showing genuine fear, is the first time in the film he's allowed himself to feel something he can't control, and Mathilda knows it. She's not trying to die. She's trying to prove that he loves her, that underneath all the rules and routines and emotional numbness there's a person who would be devastated if she were gone. And she's right. And Leon knows she's right. But admitting it out loud would mean acknowledging that the system has already failed, that is already attached, that is already vulnerable, and his psychology won't allow him to cross that line. So instead he does what he always does. He retreats into the professional identity, tells her the gun wasn't loaded, turns it into a lesson instead of an emotional moment, because lessons are safe and feelings are not. The film presents this as Leon learning to love, but the psychology suggests something darker. Leon was always capable of love. He just understood that love was a thing that would destroy him. And he was right. The moment he cares about Mathilda, he stops being untouchable. He makes mistakes. He hesitates. He takes risks no professional would take. And when Stansfield's men surround the building, Leon isn't trapped by firepower. He's trapped by attachment. A version of Leon without Mathilda would have disappeared the second he sensed danger, would have abandoned the apartment and the situation and moved to another city within hours. Because professionals don't fight battles they don't have to fight. They survive by never being where the danger is. But Leon stays. And he stays because leaving means abandoning Mathilda. And abandoning Mathilda means admitting that the last few weeks meant nothing, that is still the same emotionally dead machine he was before she arrived, and some part of him, maybe the part that's been asleep for 20 years, maybe the part has been trying to kill since childhood, refuses to go back. And Stansfield himself functions as a dark mirror of what Leon could become if he stayed in the profession long enough, because Stansfield isn't just corrupt, he's psychologically unraveled, a man who started with rules and structure and gradually discovered that violence without boundaries, without ethics, without any limiting principle feels like freedom. And Leon sees this, recognizes it, understands on some level that Stansfield represents the endpoint of the path he's been walking, a version of himself that stopped pretending the isolation was about survival and started admitting it was about emptiness. When Stansfield takes those pills and talks about Beethoven and gets close enough to feel the danger, he's performing a kind of psychological theater that Leon never permits himself. And the reason Leon never permits it is because he knows that once you start performing your own darkness, once you start enjoying the violence instead of just executing it, you cross a line you can't uncross. And Stansfield crossed that line years ago and is still standing, still functional, still alive, which proves that you don't need rules or limits or emotional boundaries to survive in this world. You just need to stop pretending you're anything other than what the violence has made you. So when Leon dies protecting Mathilda, the film frames it as redemption, as the moment he finally becomes human. But here's a narrative error. Leon didn't need to become human. He needed to stay inhuman to survive. And the ending punishes him for the very thing it's trying to celebrate. The moment he pulls a pin on those grenades and takes Stansfield with him, he's making the most human choice of his life. Sacrifice, love, connection. And it kills him. which means the psychology he built his entire existence around was correct, that attachment does make you vulnerable, that caring about someone does give the world a weapon to use against you. And the only reason the ending feels satisfying is because we are watching from outside the logic, from a perspective that values emotional growth over survival. But Leon's entire character has been built on the opposite calculation, and the ending doesn't resolve that contradiction. It just kills him before he has to live with it. If we follow Leon's established psychology to its logical conclusion, the consistent ending isn't sacrifice, it's reversion. Leon recognizes that attachment has made him vulnerable, that caring about Mathilda has compromised every survival instinct that kept him alive for 2 decades, and he makes a choice that actually aligns with who has been throughout the entire story. Leon gets Mathilda to safety, but he doesn't die protecting her. He disappears. He puts her in a cab, gives her money, sends her to the school she mentioned, and then he vanishes, because that's what professionals do when a situation becomes untenable. They extract themselves and start over, and Leon has spent his entire life practicing extraction. Mathilda waits for him, believes he'll come back, checks the apartment every day for weeks, but he doesn't, because coming back means acknowledging the attachment, and acknowledging the attachment means validating the very vulnerability that almost got them both killed. Leon relocates to another city, another apartment, another identical routine, and he tells himself it's just another job that ended, just another situation he walked away from. But the difference is at this time, the routine doesn't work the same way. The milk tastes the same, the exercises are the same, the jobs are the same, but the function is different. He's not maintaining emotional numbness anymore. He's trying to rebuild it, trying to recreate the system that Mathilda broke. And the fact that he has to try, the fact that it requires effort now, proves that something fundamental has changed. He goes through the motions, completes contracts, deposits money with Tony, who asks no questions because Tony learned years ago that Leon doesn't answer them. And on the surface, everything looks exactly like it did before Mathilda. But internally, Leon is running a constant background process of suppression, actively pushing down thoughts of whether she made it to the school, whether she's safe, whether she thinks about him, whether she hates him for leaving, and the energy required to maintain. That suppression is a proof that the system is damaged, that you can't unknow that you're capable of caring. You can only pretend you don't. And Mathilda, in this version, experiences her own psychological outcome that the film's ending avoids. She learns the same lesson Leon learned decades earlier, that people leave, that attachment creates loss, that the world takes away the things you care about, and she has to decide whether to let that lesson turn her into another Leon, isolated, functional, emotionally dead, or whether to reject it entirely and risk the vulnerability that caring requires. The film's ending doesn't give her that choice because Leon's sacrifice protects her from having to learn the hard lesson, but the psychologically consistent ending forces her to confront it directly. Leon chose survival over connection, chose the system over her, and she has to live with the knowledge that even someone who seemed to care, someone who risked everything to protect her, ultimately reverted to the pattern that kept him alive. And maybe that means love isn't strong enough. Or maybe it means Leon was too damaged to choose it. Or maybe it just means that some people are so broken by their past that no amount of present can fix them. Leon continues working, continues surviving, but is carrying something he never carried before. The knowledge that he was capable of connection, that for a brief moment he let someone in and the world didn't end immediately, and that knowledge sits in his mind like a foreign object, something his psychology can't fully process or integrate. He doesn't become a better person, doesn't retire and find peace, doesn't track Mathilda down years later for a reunion. He just continues, isolated and functional and technically alive, but with the faint awareness that the system he built to protect himself is also the thing that's keeping him from ever being more than a machine that happens to look like a man. And maybe one day, years later, he sees a girl who looks like Mathilda might look now, and for just a second he wonders if it's her, if she made it, if she's okay. And then he turns away and keeps walking because wondering is dangerous and caring is fatal, and the only thing that's kept him alive this long is the ability to walk away from everything, even the one person who made him feel like walking away might be the wrong choice. The film chose sacrifice because sacrifice feels like growth, but growth isn't always the same thing as consistency. Leon spent 20 years proving that emotional isolation was the only way he could survive, and the ending proved him right by killing him the moment he tried to be anything else. If you change the choice, you don't get redemption. You get a man who lives longer but understands. Finally, that survival and being alive are not the same thing. That is won the game of staying breathing but lost the game of being human. And there's no third option. No compromise, no way to have both safety and connection when your entire psychology has been built on the fundamental incompatibility of those two things. Leon's tragedy isn't that he died. It's that he was right all along. And being right meant becoming something that could survive anything except the one thing that might have made survival worth it.